And as science has evolved, international policymakers have agreed on science-based global targets for climate, nature, and humanity to ensure a safe future for all. So as we did in the 80s to save our protective ozone layer, in 2016 at the UN Conference of the Parties, or COP for Climate in Paris, nearly every country in the world came together to agree a plan for avoiding the worst effects of climate change. That is to halve global emissions by 2030 and reach net zero by 2050. And net zero means cancelling the entirety of your footprint across your whole value chain, aligning with that 1.5-degree limit and taking into account all greenhouse gases. And besides accounting for direct in-house emissions called your Scope 1 and the 2 emissions, net zero also requires accounting for those released both upstream from your suppliers and downstream, meaning your customers. So what's the difference between this and carbon neutrality? Well, while net zero requires accountability for all greenhouse gas emissions across the full value chain, carbon neutrality needs only address carbon dioxide across your Scope 1 and 2. And these are critical differences to know when communicating your emission reduction ambitions, as is your alignment with globally agreed targets. Similar targets are in place for the protection of nature, which is imperative since 1/3 of global GDP is directly reliant on biodiversity alone and half linked to nature. So to stop the collapse of the natural world, we must protect at least 30% of the ocean and 30% of land and 50% by 2050. A significant uplift from that today, for only 3% of our oceans are protected at the moment. And this will enable nature to start regenerating herself and eventually become what we call nature positive, a state in which our key ecosystems have regained their full resilience and are able to expand again. And last year, the greatest global Paris Agreement since Paris launched the Treaty on Plastic Waste. And actually, today, also in Paris, global leaders are agreeing the final details of this treaty, which will undoubtedly have repercussions for all businesses with plastic in their supply chains. But ultimately, fixing the environmental crisis can't happen without the development of all of humanity. And that's why the UN established the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, to guide our progress towards an equitable and more sustainable future for all. This incredible set of targets agreed by nearly every country in the world aims to end poverty and hunger, guarantee access to clean water, education, and clean energy, and offer everyone a fair chance of living a safe and happy life. And each has a specific target and progress indicators to enable governments, companies, and NGOs around the world to design their activities in ways that contribute to achieving them. And these goals, as with those set out for nature's protection and climate change mitigation, are also set for 2030, just 7 years from now.